Now on to slide 15, we will see total cost, which is equal to total fixed cost plus total variable cost, and we will see the corresponding diagrams for each of these, right? So we'll see the total cost diagram is the red diagram, the red line, and the fixed cost is the horizontal line, because remember fixed cost is fixed, it's independent of output, and then variable cost is the kind of orangish line starting from the zero origin, right? And total cost, you would see total cost starts exactly where fixed cost starts, because total cost is fixed cost plus variable cost, right? And we will see the table here illustrating total cost, fixed cost, and variable cost. You would see from the table fixed cost is the same. Fixed cost does not change as output is increasing, and in this example is rakes per minute. And so even if when we move from 0 to 10 rakes, fixed cost is 36, it remains the same. Whereas variable cost, we are seeing that variable cost on the other hand is increasing as output is increasing. And then total cost would be fixed cost plus variable cost. And here we have the corresponding diagrams for that. On slide 16 now, we are looking at average variable cost, marginal cost, average fixed cost, average variable cost, and average total cost, right? And the marginal cost, your marginal cost is the green line, which is the first one, the kind of greenish one, upward sloping. Remember earlier on in the diagram, I explained that marginal cost is upward sloping, and it usually cuts average cost at its minimum. And then we have average total cost. Now remember, average total is not the same as total. Average total would be what? Total cost divided by output, right? Whereas total cost would be variable cost plus fixed cost. Average total cost is total cost divided by output. In the same way, average fixed cost is not the same as fixed cost. Average fixed cost would be fixed cost over output. Same thing, average variable cost. Average variable cost is not the same as variable cost. Average variable cost is variable cost over output. And average total cost is total cost over output. So in this case, we are seeing that average total cost is downward sloping, because as you divide total cost over output, it's going to decrease. Average fixed cost is also downward sloping, because as you divide fixed cost, remember fixed cost was fixed, but average fixed cost does not remain the same, because you are dividing fixed cost by output, and as output is changing, fixed cost would also change. Same thing for average variable cost. So in this diagram, we are looking at average total, average fixed, average variable, which means you are dividing each of these by output to get the corresponding cost, right? And this is seen in the table where we're seeing marginal cost. Marginal cost is the additional cost for each unit produced. So when with 0, marginal cost is nothing. Then 1 unit, cost is 8. 2 units, right? For 2 units of our 2 rakes, we have cost being 4. For 3 units, 3. So the cost, we have your marginal cost decreasing as output is increasing, right? So it's the additional cost. Now let us go down to slide 17, and where we put these two cost curves together. So in this diagram, we have all the cost in the table, right? So we have in the first diagram our total cost, our variable cost, our fixed cost. Next one, we have our marginal cost, our average total cost, our average fixed cost, and our average variable cost. Remember, for your average cost, you divide by output, right? So this is a summary of all your short run cost, right? All short run cost is a summary of all your short run cost. You would notice that fixed cost is the same all the way through. Variable cost is increasing. Total cost is fixed cost plus variable cost. Marginal cost is the additional cost from producing 1 unit of output, which is changing total cost over changing output. This is how you get marginal cost. So changing total cost over changing output, right? This is how you get margin. So 36 minus 44 minus 36 gives you 8. 8 divided by 1 is 8. Same way, 48 minus 44, it gives you 4, right? And then we continue. So marginal cost, we get marginal cost by changing total cost over changing output. Now we move on to slide 18. 18 would have just given you the formulas here, where average total cost is average fixed cost plus average variable cost. How do we arrive at average fixed cost? It's fixed cost over output. How do we arrive at variable cost? average variable cost is variable cost over output. How do we arrive at average total cost? Another way to arrive at it is total cost over output. And then marginal cost is the change in total cost over the change in output. So this is what I would have explained in the slides above. And then in slide 19 is a nice table which you would have to calculate as part of your forum so that you can see if it is you understand cost analysis. So this is your forum in slide 19. You would see it under your compulsory forum for you to answer. Now we're going to move on to examine long run costs. And the key difference on slide 20, the key difference between the short run and the long run is that there's no diminishing returns in the long run. Remember I said earlier that diminishing returns is a short run phenomena, right? Now in slide 21, long run average cost. We are now looking at what is called LAC, or in some books you will see LRAC, which is the long run average cost. And your long run average cost is your total cost divided by the quantity of output in the long run when both of your factors of production are allowed to vary, right? So the long run average cost curve describes the behavior of average costs as the firm plant expands, and it usually is a U-shaped cost curve, right? And each part of that cost curve would depict something different. When we go on to slide 22, we are seeing part of the long run average cost curve. So when the long run average total cost is proportionate to the quantity produced, long run average cost does not change as output increase. We're not going to look at that slide. Let's move on to slide 23. Now your long run average cost curve is a U-shaped curve, and the downward sloping part of the U-shaped curve measures what is called economies of scale. So I just want you to just scroll to your slides down to slide 27 quickly. If you go to slide 27, you will see a nice diagram illustrating your long run average cost curve. Now you would see it's U-shaped. We have a downward sloping part, we have a kind of horizontal part, and then we have an upward sloping part. The downward sloping part of your long run average cost curve represents economies of scale, and you would see the definition of economies of scale on slide 23. Right? What is economies of scale? Economies of scale is a situation in which as your output increase, the quantity produced increase, your cost would decrease. So, and it's a situation in which an increase in your quantity produced leads to a decrease in your long run average cost. Right? Economies of scale is cost savings, and increasing output leads to a decrease in cost. So most firms want to experience economies of scale, but as your output is increasing, your cost is decreasing. And that is why it represents the downward sloping part of the cost curve, which represents as output is increasing, cost is decreasing. And then the horizontal part of the cost curve, right, is called minimum efficiency, and minimum efficiency is explained in slide 24, right? What is minimum efficiency? Minimum efficiency scale describes the output at which economies of scale are exhausted, and your long run average cost curve becomes horizontal. So there's no more economies of scale. As output is increasing, cost remains the same. So you've exhausted your economies of scale, right? And once the minimum efficiency scale has been reached, an increase in output no longer leads to a decrease in cost, right? Whereas the upward sloping part of the cost curve represents diseconomies of scale. And diseconomies of scale is explained in slide 25. What is diseconomies of scale? This is where firm experience as output increase, your cost is also increasing. And firms do not want to experience diseconomies of scale. It means it's increased cost. As output is increasing, cost is increasing, right? And diseconomies of scale can arise because of coordination problems. It can arise because of increasing the cost of your factors of production. So the long run average cost curve represents three things. The downward sloping part shows us economies of scale, which shows when output is increasing, cost is decreasing. The horizontal part represents minimum efficiency scale, which means we have exhausted economies of scale. As output is increasing, cost is no longer decreasing. And the upward sloping part represents diseconomies of scale, which means as output is increasing, cost is also increasing. Now, firms would want to be where? Firms would want to experience diseconomies of scale or minimum efficiencies. Economies of scale or minimum efficiency. You don't want to be experiencing diseconomies of scale, right? So based on the long run average cost curve on slide 26, we can see that it is a U-shaped curve. All the factors and all costs may vary. Short run cost curves are tangent to the long run cost curve. So if you were to take a look at the last slide, which is slide 28, you would see basically the long run average cost curve is just a combination of your short run cost. So these the smaller, the SRATC, which is short run average total cost, it's just a combination of your short run average total cost that makes up your long run average cost. So short run average cost makes up your long run average cost curve. Your long run average cost curve is a U-shaped curve, and it illustrates economies of scale, minimum efficiency scale, and diseconomies of scale. Now, this lecture is also a lecture where you have to do some calculations in terms of your costs, your different types of costs. The formulas are there. The explanation is there. You should go ahead and attempt your forum. If you have any questions, any queries or concerns, please feel free to see me during office hours or post a question for me or send me an email. I want to wish you a blessed week. Bye.